Imagine a serial killer who not only commits brutal crimes, but also taunts the police and media with coded letters and enigmatic threats. A criminal who calls himself Zodiac and who, despite having terrorized an entire region, was never identified. Welcome to the somber and frustrating world of the Zodiac Killer, one of the most famous and enduring criminal mysteries in American history. Prepare to delve into a case that defies logic, with red herrings, conspiracy theories, and an identity that has remained hidden for over 5 decades. Who was Zodiac, and why was he never caught? These questions continue to haunt all who dare to investigate his crimes, and today, we will try to unravel the layers of this mystery that refuses to be solved. Are you ready to face the enigma of the Zodiac Killer? The Zodiac Killer is the pseudonym of an unidentified serial killer who terrorized the San Francisco Bay Area, California, between December 1968 and October 1969. He's credited with 5 confirmed murders and 2 injuries, although he claimed to have killed 37 victims in his letters. The case became a popular culture phenomenon and a focus for amateur detectives due to its enigmatic nature and lack of resolution. The known Zodiac attacks occurred in Benicia, Vallejo, unincorporated Napa County, and the city and county of San Francisco. He attacked 3 young couples and the lone taxi driver. 2 of these couples survived the attacks. The Zodiac coined his name in a series of provocative messages he sent to regional newspapers, in which he threatened massacres and bombings if they were not printed. He also said that he was collecting his victims as slaves for the afterlife. He included 4 cryptograms or ciphers in his correspondence. 2 were deciphered in 1969 and 2020, and 2 are generally considered unsolved. The killer's audacity in communicating directly with the media and police, and the nature of his messages, distinguished him from other criminals of the time, elevating him to an almost mythical status in criminal folklore. Investigators agree on 4 confirmed Zodiac Killer attacks in California, resulting in 5 deaths and 2 injuries. Each of these attacks added a new layer to the mystery, revealing a pattern of cold and calculating behavior, but also an apparent randomness in the choice of victims and methods of murder. First attack, Lake Herman Road, December 20th, 1968. The known Zodiac victims were David Arthur Faraday, 17, and Betty Lou Jensen, 16. They were on their first date and had parked in a secluded area known as Lover S Lane on Lake Herman Road in Benicia. At about 11:15 p.m., a car approached and parked behind theirs. A man got out of the vehicle and approached Faraday's car. What followed was a shocking act of violence. Faraday was shot in the head as he tried to get out of the car. Jensen, in a panic, tried to flee, but was shot 5 times in the back as she ran. Both died at the scene. The brutality of the attack and the apparent lack of immediate motive left police perplexed. There were no signs of robbery or sexual assault. It was a cold and senseless murder, the first in a series that would terrorize California. Second attack, Blue Rock Springs Park, July 4th, 1969. 6 months later, in the early hours of July 4th, 1969, the Zodiac attacked again. The victims were Michael Renaud Magot, 19, and Darlene Elizabeth Farron, 22. They were parked at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo when a car approached and parked next to theirs. The driver of the other car, whom Farron seemed to recognize, got out and approached the vehicle. He then shone a flashlight in the victims' faces and began shooting. Farron was hit multiple times and died in hospital. Magot, despite being shot in the face, neck, and chest, survived and was able to provide a description of the shooter. This attack was even more audacious, occurring on a national holiday and in a more public location. The fact that Farron had received a mysterious phone call shortly before going out with Magot added a layer of intrigue to the case, suggesting she might have been a specific target. Third attack, Lake Berryessa, September 27th, 1969, The Zodiac's third confirmed attack was perhaps the most disturbing, demonstrating an escalation in the killer's cruelty and theatricality. Brian Calvin Hartnell, 20, and Cecilia and Shepard, 22, were having a picnic at Lake Berryessa in Napa County. A man approached them wearing a black hooded costume with a crosshair symbol drawn on it and dark glasses. He was armed with a pistol and a knife. The man tied up the victims and then stabbed them repeatedly. Hartnell was stabbed 6 times in the back but survived. Shepard was stabbed 10 times and died 2 days later due to her injuries. Before leaving, the killer wrote a message on Hartnell's car, including the dates of the previous attacks and the crosshair symbol. This attack was a shock to the community, not only because of its brutality, but also because of the killer's boldness in exposing himself and leaving a clear message of his authorship. Fourth attack, Presidio Heights, October 11, 1969. The Zodiac's fourth confirmed attack was that of Paul Lee Stein, a 29-year-old taxi driver. Stein was shot and killed in the Presidio Heights neighborhood of San Francisco. The killer took Stein's wallet and a piece of his shirt as a trophy. This piece of shirt was later sent to the police in a letter, proving the Zodiac's authorship. Stein's murder was particularly significant because it occurred in a more urban area and was witnessed by 3 teenagers who saw the killer walking away from the taxi. They initially thought it was just a robbery, but when the police arrived, they discovered Stein was dead. The description of the killer provided by the teenagers led to a composite sketch that became iconic in the Zodiac case. This attack marked the end of the confirmed murders, but not the end of the Zodiac's terror. Between 1968 and 1974, the Zodiac sent a series of highly coded letters and ciphers to the police and media, primarily to the San Francisco Chronicle, San Francisco Examiner, and Vallejo Times-Herald newspapers. These correspondence were the killer's main form of communication with the outside world and became an intrinsic part of the mystery. Some letters began with the phrase "This is Zodiac speaking" and were signed with a symbol resembling a gun sight, which became his trademark. He used the letters to mock the police, threaten more attacks, and demand that his messages be published in the newspapers. Otherwise, he would commit more murders. The Zodiac's letters were full of spelling and grammatical errors, which led some to believe they were intentional, perhaps to mislead investigators or to create a persona. However, they contained details of the crimes that only the killer could know, proving his authorship. Most intriguing were the 4 cryptograms or ciphers he included in his correspondence. 2 of them were deciphered. The first, known as Z408, was solved by a schoolteacher couple in 1969 and revealed a disturbing message about Zodiac's belief that he was collecting souls to serve him in the afterlife. The second, known as Z340, remained unsolved for over 50 years, until it was deciphered by an international team of cryptographers in 2020. The Z340 message was equally sinister, with Zodiac mocking the police and expressing his pleasure in killing. The other 2 cryptograms, Z13 and Z32, are generally considered unsolved, adding more layers to the mystery of the killer's mind. The investigation into the Zodiac killer was one of the most extensive and frustrating in American criminal history, despite the efforts of various law enforcement agencies, including the San Francisco Police Department, the Vallejo Police Department, the Napa County Sheriff's Office, and the FBI. The killer's identity was never confirmed. The lack of definitive forensic evidence, such as DNA, made it difficult to identify the killer, and the Zodiac's elusive nature, who always seemed to be one step ahead of authorities, added to the frustration. The only suspect publicly named by authorities was Arthur Lee Allen, a former elementary school teacher and convicted sex offender. Allen was extensively investigated, and there was some circumstantial evidence linking him to the crimes, including his resemblance to the Zodiac's composite sketch and his interest in cryptography. However, the evidence against Allen was circumstantial, and he was never formally charged. He died in 1992. and DNA tests performed on case evidence after his death did not conclusively link him to the crimes. The absence of a definitive connection to Alan left the door open for other theories and suspects. Over the years, countless other suspects have been proposed by amateur and professional detectives, each with their own theories and evidence. The list of suspects is long and varied, including names such as Richard Gajkowski, Lawrence Kane, Earl Van Besch Jr., and Gary Post, among others. However, none of them have been conclusively linked to the crimes, and the case remains open in several California jurisdictions. The lack of an official resolution to the Zodiac case has been a source of frustration for the victims' families and for investigators who continue to seek the truth. After October 1969, the Zodiac's confirmed attacks ceased, although he continued to send letters until 1974. The last confirmed Zodiac letter was sent in January 1974, and from then on, the killer seemed to disappear. The sudden disappearance of the killer generated many theories. Some believe he may have died, been arrested for other crimes, moved out of state, or simply decided to stop killing. The absence of new confirmed attacks after 1969 is one of the most intriguing aspects of the case, and the lack of a clear explanation for his silence adds another layer to the mystery. The Zodiac Killer has become a pop culture icon, inspiring countless books, films, documentaries, and television shows. His image, with the hood and crosshair symbol, is instantly recognizable and evokes a sense of fear and mystery. The film Zodiac 2007, directed by David Fincher, is perhaps the most famous portrayal of the case in the media, depicting the obsession of investigators and journalists in unraveling the mystery. The case continues to fascinate the public and inspire amateur detectives to try and solve the mystery, with new theories and evidence periodically emerging. The Zodiac story is a somber reminder that some of the most terrifying crimes remain unsolved, leaving a legacy of fear and unanswered questions, and the promise that the enigma of the Zodiac Killer will continue to haunt the collective imagination for many generations. The mystery of the Zodiac Killer continues to haunt us, a California phantom that refuses to be exorcised. Who do you think the Zodiac was? Which theory makes the most sense to you? Do you believe he is still alive, or that his identity was taken to the grave? Leave your comment below and share your thoughts. Your opinion is very important to us. If you were intrigued by this case and want more stories of unsolved crimes, mysteries that defy logic and make us question reality, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next videos. In our next episode, we're going to dive into another mystery that will leave you breathless. Stay tuned.